My brother's wife looked me dead in the eye at Thanksgiving dinner and said, "Alex, your parents only love you when you're paying their bills. You're basically their personal ATM machine." Then she laughed. Actually laughed while cutting into the turkey I'd bought, sitting in the house I'd saved from foreclosure, wearing the diamond earrings Cameron gave her, with money from the credit card I pay off every month. 20 years of funding my family's lifestyle. 20 years of bailing out my golden boy brother Cameron while he got all the praise for following his dreams. I'd paid my parents a $180,000 mortgage, bought Cameron 4 cars, covered $45,000 in his student loans, and funded every family vacation since I started my business. Last month alone, I'd wired them $8,000 to cover Cameron and Jessica's engagement party expenses. And Jessica's response, she smirked and turned to my mother saying, "See, Mom? I told you Alex would always take care of us. He's too guilty to ever stop." My mother nodded and said, "Jessica's right, Alex understands family responsibility." But what none of them knew was that I'd already hired a private investigator to look into Jessica's background. What I found out about her 3 previous marriages and the restraining orders changed everything. While they were planning their $50,000 wedding on my dime, I was planning something else entirely. I was going to completely destroy them. It wasn't supposed to be this way. Growing up, I was the responsible one, straight A's scholarship to business school, started my first company at 25. Cameron was 3 years younger and everything came easy to him. Sports friends charm. He could walk into a room and everyone would gravitate toward him like he was some kind of magnet. My parents made it clear early on which son they preferred. When Cameron got suspended for cheating in high school, they called it a learning experience. When I graduated summa cum laude, they said, "That's nice, honey," and went back to discussing Cameron's latest girlfriend. The message was simple: Cameron was the golden boy who brought joy to their lives. I was the one with financial responsibility. For 20 years, I'd been their personal ATM machine. I paid off their mortgage when Dad's business failed, $180,000 over 4 years. I bought Cameron his first car at 18, then his second when he crashed the first one, then his third when he decided he needed something more reliable for work. Work that consisted of a series of failed startups and part-time jobs that never lasted more than 6 months. Every family emergency became my emergency. Mom's medical bills, Dad's credit card debt, Cameron's student loans that he defaulted on twice. Last year alone, I'd transferred over $60,000 to various family members. And every time I helped, Cameron got the credit for bringing the family together, while I got a polite thank you and an immediate request for the next payment. They treated my success like it was their inheritance. Then Cameron brought Jessica home 2 years ago and everything got worse. Jessica was 28, blonde, and had mastered the art of looking helpless while being completely calculating. She didn't work, couldn't find the right opportunity that matched her skill set. She had expensive tastes and zero ability to pay for them. Within a month of dating Cameron, she was dropping hints about the family helping with her student loans, her car payments, her credit card debt. My parents loved her immediately. She was perfect for their golden boy, beautiful, charming, and completely dependent on family money, which meant my money. Jessica fit right into the family business of spending my money while pretending I didn't exist. Thanksgiving 2023 was when Jessica finally said what everyone was thinking. We were all sitting around my parents' dining room table, the one I'd helped them buy when they moved into the house I'd saved from foreclosure. Jessica had been drinking wine and getting bolder with each glass. "You know what I love about this family," she said, cutting into her turkey. "Everyone knows their role. Cameron brings the charm and personality. Your parents provide the love and wisdom. And Alex..." She paused, looking directly at me with that smug smile. "Alex provides the money. It's like having a personal ATM machine that never runs out." My mother laughed, actually laughed. My father nodded like Jessica had made some profound observation about family dynamics. Cameron grinned and said, "That's my brother always taking care of business." Nobody at that table disagreed with her. Nobody told her she was wrong or that I was more than just a funding source. They all just accepted it as fact because that's exactly how they saw me. But then Jessica made it worse. She leaned back in her chair and said, "Speaking of which, we need to talk about the wedding. We've been looking at venues and the good ones start at $50,000. I told Cameron not to worry because family takes care of family, right, Alex?" She wasn't asking, she was telling. She'd already decided that I was going to fund their entire wedding, and she was announcing it like it was a done deal. My parents were nodding along. Cameron was smiling like he'd just won the lottery, and Jessica was sitting there, looking at me like I was a vending machine that just needed the right button pushed. They wanted $50,000 for a wedding I wasn't even invited to plan. The pressure started the next day. My phone rang at 7 in the morning, my mother calling to follow up on our conversation about the wedding. There hadn't been a conversation. There'd been Jessica making an announcement and everyone assuming I'd comply. "Alex, honey, I know 50,000 sounds like a lot, but this is Cameron's special day," Mom said. "You've always been so generous with family, and Jessica has her heart set on the Riverside Country Club. They require a deposit by next Friday." Next Friday, they'd given me 1 week to wire $50,000 for a wedding I had no input on planning. When I suggested maybe they should consider a smaller budget, Mom's voice got tight. "Alex, this is your brother we're talking about. Are you really going to be difficult about this?" By noon, I'd gotten 3 more calls. Cameron, Dad, and Jessica herself, all saying the same thing in different ways: family helps family. This was important. I had the money. What was the big deal? They were acting like addicts who'd been cut off from their dealer, panicking at the first sign I might not automatically open my wallet. That afternoon, Cameron showed up at my office unannounced. He looked nervous, which was unusual for him. Cameron never looked nervous about anything. Confidence had always been his superpower. "Listen, man, about the wedding costs," he said, sitting across from my desk like we were negotiating a business deal. "I know it seems like a lot, but Jessica's family expects a certain standard. Her dad's in real estate, her mom's in the country club scene. We can't look cheap." I asked him directly, "Cameron, how much money do you have saved for your own wedding?" He shifted in his chair. "Well, I've been focusing on getting the business off the ground. You know, the app development thing is really taking off, but it's all reinvestment right now. I probably have like $3,000 in checking. $3,000. My 30-year-old brother, who was planning a $50,000 wedding, had $3,000 to his name. Cameron had no money because he'd never needed any. Everything had always been provided by me. That evening, both my parents showed up at my house. This was the nuclear option the full court press designed to make me feel guilty for even hesitating to fund my brother's wedding. "Alex, we're disappointed in you," Dad said. "This isn't like you to be selfish about family." Mom jumped in with the heavy artillery. "Your brother has found the love of his life, and you're going to ruin it over money you'll never even miss. What kind of brother does that?" They talked about family loyalty, about how I'd always been the responsible one, about how Cameron deserved happiness. They made it sound like refusing to fund his wedding would make me some kind of monster. The message was clear: good sons don't question family obligations. Good sons just pay. That's when I decided to find out who Jessica really was. The next morning, I called Marcus Chen, a private investigator I'd used for business due diligence. If my family was so sure Jessica was perfect for Cameron, they wouldn't mind if I verified that right. Marcus specialized in background checks for high-net-worth individuals, exactly what I needed. "I want everything," I told him over coffee at his downtown office. "Financial history, criminal records, previous relationships, employment verification, social media analysis, credit reports. If she's ever been married before, I want to know about it. If she's got debt court judgments, restraining orders, unpaid bills, everything that exists in the public record." Marcus leaned back in his chair, studying me. "This level of investigation usually runs about $3,000 and takes 7 to 10 business days. Are you sure you want to go this deep on a family member?" "I just spent more than that on Cameron's last car repair, so it felt like a bargain." "I'm sure. And Marcus, I need this fast. They're pressuring me for wedding funding, and I want facts before I make any decisions." While Marcus worked, the family pressure continued escalating. Jessica started texting me directly, sending links to wedding venues, catering menus, and floral arrangements, like I'd already agreed to pay for everything. "Just wanted to keep you in the loop on planning," she wrote, followed by a photo of a $7,000 flower arrangement. "Cameron said you'd want to see where the money's going. These roses are imported from Ecuador, totally worth it for our special day." She was already spending my money in her mind. What my investigator found changed everything forever. Jessica Marie Patterson had been married 3 times before Cameron. Not once, 3 times. Each marriage had followed the exact same pattern. Target a successful man, get engaged within 6 months, plan an expensive wedding funded by the victim, then systematically drain his finances before filing for divorce within 18 to 24 months. Marcus had documentation for everything: marriage certificates, divorce decrees, police reports, court filings, victim statements, and financial records that painted a picture of calculated predatory behavior spanning 15 years. Husband number one was Dr. David Chen, a successful dentist from Portland. Jessica had convinced him to put her name on his business checking account for wedding planning purposes. Within 6 months of their 2018 wedding, she'd transferred $78,000 to personal accounts and disappeared to Seattle. The divorce was finalized while David was still trying to figure out how to pay his office rent and staff's salaries. Husband number two was Michael Torres, a software engineer who developed 3 successful mobile apps. Jessica had convinced him to buy a $450,000 house together in 2020, then forged his signature on a second mortgage to extract another $200,000 in equity. She'd used the money to fund her lifestyle while telling Michael the payments were temporarily suspended due to a COVID bank error. Michael lost the house and filed for bankruptcy in 2021. Husband number 3 was Robert Kim, who owned a small but profitable chain of Korean restaurants in the Bay Area. Jessica had convinced him to make her a business partner in 2022, then systematically sold his equipment supplies and even his restaurant furniture to pay for what she called a comprehensive marketing campaign that never existed. Robert's 3 restaurants closed within 6 months, and he lost everything he'd built over 12 years. She'd done this 3 times before Cameron. 3 successful men who'd trusted her completely, 3 families who'd welcomed her with open arms, 3 financial empires she'd systematically destroyed while building her own nest egg. The pattern was always identical. Charm the family first, gain their trust and support, isolate the financial target, gain access to accounts and assets, extract maximum value, then disappear before the legal consequences caught up. The court documents revealed even more disturbing details. All 3 previous victims had filed restraining orders after Jessica had attempted to return to their lives months later with elaborate sob stories about wanting to make things right and having learned from her mistakes. The restraining orders were still active, meaning Jessica was legally prohibited from contacting any of her previous victims. She hadn't just stolen money, she'd perfected the art of turning loving families into personal ATM machines, then disappearing when the accounts ran dry. But this time she'd picked the wrong target, because unlike David, Michael, and Robert, I wasn't blinded by love or family pressure. I was just the guy who paid the bills, and I was about to completely destroy them all. Marcus delivered the complete investigative report the following Tuesday, 47 pages of documentation that read like a criminal prosecution brief. It wasn't just Jessica's history, it was a comprehensive dossier showing how a professional con artist had refined her techniques over 15 years of targeting successful men and their families. I spent the entire weekend organizing everything into a timeline. Jessica's pattern was so consistent, it was almost boring in its predictability. Meet successful man through chance encounter, charm his family within the first month, get engaged within 6 months, gain financial access through wedding planning or business partnerships, extract maximum value over 12 to 18 months, then disappear with a substantial nest egg. The only variable was how much money she managed to steal before her victims caught on. But I needed more than just Jessica's criminal history. I needed to understand how deep this deception went within my own family. Had they known about her background, were they complicit in the con or just useful idiots? I started digging into recent family communications and financial records. That's when I discovered the fraudulent business documents Cameron had been circulating around our hometown. My golden boy brother had been telling everyone, friends, acquaintances, potential employers, even local business owners, that we were equal partners in my company. He'd created professional-looking contracts on my company letterhead, complete with forged signatures and fake witness notarizations, claiming he was entitled to 40% of my annual profits. I found copies of these documents at First National Bank, where Cameron had attempted to use them as collateral for a $75,000 personal loan. The loan officer, Maria Santos, had called my office 2 weeks earlier to verify the partnership agreement and Mr. Cameron Patterson's authority to borrow against company assets. When my assistant Jennifer told her no such partnership existed, Maria had immediately flagged the application as potential fraud. The fake contracts were professionally made, Cameron had clearly invested significant time and money into creating documents that would fool a casual inspection. He'd even backdated them to make it appear we'd been business partners since 2019, complete with fabricated revenue-sharing agreements and profit distributions. My own brother had been committing identity theft and document fraud using my business reputation to secure funding for his lifestyle. But the real revelation came when I accessed our family group chat history through the cloud backup on my old iPad. I'd been added to their text thread years ago, but rarely participated, mostly just getting notifications about family events or requests for money. What I didn't realize was that they'd been having detailed parallel conversations in a separate group chat that excluded me entirely. Cameron had been screenshotting our private conversations and sharing them with Mom, Dad, and Jessica, adding his own commentary like, "Watch this. Alex is so predictable, just mention family loyalty and he opens his wallet. And he's so stupid about money he'll pay for anything if you make it sound like an emergency." Jessica had contributed her own professional observations. "Your brother's like having a trust fund that never runs out. He's got all this guilt about being successful while you guys struggle. And I've studied guys like this before. They're desperate to buy family approval because they think money is their only value." My mother had written, "Alex has always been good for money when we need it. He feels guilty about being the only successful one, so he overcompensates by paying for everything." My father's contribution was even more calculated. "As long as we make him feel needed and appreciated, he'll keep writing checks. It's not really manipulation if he genuinely wants to help the family." They'd been discussing me like a financial resource to be managed and exploited. Every family emergency I'd funded, every crisis I'd solved, every generous gesture I'd made over 20 years, they'd all been analyzed, discussed, and strategically planned in their private group chat. I was their personal ATM machine, and they'd been sharing tips on the most effective ways to make withdrawals. The most damaging evidence came from the wedding venue itself. Cameron and Jessica had booked Riverside Country Club without providing any deposit, telling venue coordinator Sarah Williams that family financing was being arranged, and payment would be processed through our family business accounts. When Sarah had pressed for a specific timeline and asked for financial references, they'd provided my company information without my knowledge or consent. Sarah had been calling Cameron daily for 2 weeks, leaving increasingly urgent voicemails that I found on his phone after he'd absent-mindedly left it at my house during Sunday dinner. "Mr. Patterson, this is Sarah from Riverside Country Club. We still haven't received your $15,000 deposit, and we have 3 other couples interested in your May date. Please call me immediately, or we'll have to release the venue and cancel your contract." Cameron had been stalling Sarah with promises that payment processing was delayed due to bank procedures, while simultaneously pressuring me to wire the full $50,000. He'd already lost 2 previous venues the same way, booking premium dates without deposits, making promises about family financing, then scrambling to guilt trip me into paying when the bills came due. Without my money, their Golden Boys empire was collapsing in real time, and they had no backup plan because they never needed one. I had everything I needed to completely destroy them. I spent 3 days reviewing all the evidence and considering my options. Jessica's criminal background, Cameron's document fraud, the family's group chat conspiracies. It was enough material to end their financial scheme permanently and probably put both Jessica and Cameron in prison. But going nuclear meant burning every bridge with my family forever, and despite everything, that wasn't a decision I could make lightly. I scheduled a consultation with David Kim, the lawyer who'd handled my business incorporation and contracts. David had 23 years of experience in criminal defense and family law, so he understood both the legal implications and the personal consequences of what I was considering. "Based on what you've shown me, you have multiple options," David explained after reviewing the evidence for 2 hours. "You could file criminal charges against your brother for identity theft, fraud, and attempted grand theft. Those forged business documents constitute felony-level document fraud in this state. Jessica's pattern suggests she might be violating parole or probation conditions from her previous convictions, which could send her back to prison immediately." He leaned forward, his expression serious. "But Alex, you need to understand the consequences of going that route. Once you file criminal complaints, this becomes a police matter. Your brother could face 3 to 5 years in prison. Jessica could get 10 to 15 as a repeat offender. Your parents would likely never forgive you for destroying their golden child, even if he deserves it. David warned me about the aftermath. I've seen families torn apart by financial fraud cases. Once you expose all this publicly, there's no going back to the way things were. Your family will either hate you for destroying their comfortable lifestyle, or they'll spend the next decade begging for forgiveness and money. Either way, the relationship you have now will be completely over. I asked him about middle ground options, confronting them privately, demanding they stop the manipulation setting, strict boundaries without going public. David shook his head. Alex, based on Jessica's history and your family's behavior patterns, they won't stop voluntarily. They'll promise to change, wait for things to cool down, then resume the same tactics. Professional con artists like Jessica don't reform, they just get better at hiding their methods. I could either be their personal ATM machine forever or completely destroy them. There was no middle ground that would actually work. The decision got much easier when Cameron called me Wednesday evening with a final ultimatum. His voice had an edge I'd never heard before, panic mixed with entitlement and barely controlled desperation. Alex, I need your answer about the wedding funding right now. We're losing vendors left and right because payments are overdue. Jessica's family is asking serious questions about whether we can actually afford this wedding. Her dad's threatening to cancel their travel plans if we can't prove we have the money. I need you to wire the $50,000 by Friday morning, or we're going to have to cancel everything and tell everyone the wedding is off. He paused, breathing heavily. Look, I know you think $50,000 sounds like a lot, but this is my wedding day we're talking about. This is supposed to be the happiest day of my life, and you're the only one who can make it happen. Are you really going to be the guy who ruins that? Are you really going to let your own brother's relationship fall apart because you're being cheap about money you'll never even miss? Then came the real threat delivered with cold calculation. Jessica's already questioning whether you actually support our relationship. Her family thinks you don't like her and you're trying to sabotage their wedding. If you don't help us with this, I don't think we can have a relationship anymore. Mom and Dad feel the same way. They said if you let your own brother's wedding fail over money, they'll never speak to you again. You'll lose your entire family forever. They gave me 48 hours to wire the money or lose my family forever, but they'd made one crucial miscalculation. They assumed that losing them would be a devastating punishment. After everything I discovered about Jessica's criminal history, Cameron's fraud attempts, and the family's private mockery of me, I realized that cutting them off would actually be freedom. So I made my decision. I wasn't going to wire $50,000 for their wedding. Instead, I was going to give them something much more valuable. The truth about who they really were delivered in front of everyone they'd been trying to impress. I started planning the perfect wedding gift. Saturday, May 18th arrived with perfect spring weather. Cameron had somehow managed to keep Riverside Country Club by promising Sarah Williams that family financing would be transferred within 24 hours of the ceremony. Jessica looked absolutely stunning in her $3,000 designer dress, the one she'd charged to the credit card I pay off every month. The venue was packed with 150 guests, friends, extended family business associates, and Jessica's relatives who'd flown in from 3 different states to witness what they believed was a fairy tale romance between a charming entrepreneur and his successful family's golden boy. I sat in the back row wearing my best suit and carrying a leather portfolio that contained 47 pages of evidence. Cameron kept glancing toward the entrance throughout the ceremony, probably hoping I'd walk in with the check at the last minute. Jessica's smile seemed forced, and she kept whispering to her maid of honor during the vows. They were both nervous, but they'd committed to the charade and decided to push forward anyway. My parents sat in the front row playing their roles as proud family patriarchs while internally panicking about the unpaid bills that were mounting by the hour. They dressed for success and smiled for photos, but I could see the stress in their faces. They knew their golden boy's empire was built on promises they couldn't keep. When the officiant asked if anyone wanted to share a few words about the happy couple, I stood up. I'd like to make a toast, I announced, walking toward the front with my portfolio in hand. The room fell silent as 150 people turned to watch me approach the altar. Thank you all for coming to celebrate Cameron and Jessica's special day. I began looking directly at the bride with a calm smile. I've gotten to know Jessica very well over the past 2 years, and I think it's important that everyone here knows exactly who she is before we celebrate this union. I opened my portfolio and pulled out the first set of documents. Jessica Marie Patterson has been married 3 times before today. Her first husband was Dr. David Chen from Portland, Oregon, who she divorced in 2019 after stealing $78,000 from his dental practice accounts. Her second husband was Michael Torres from Seattle, Washington, who lost his house in 2021 when Jessica forged his signature on a second mortgage and disappeared with the equity. Her third husband was Robert Kim from San Francisco, who went bankrupt in 2022 after Jessica sold his restaurant equipment and supplies without his knowledge or consent. The room erupted in gasps and whispers. Jessica's face drained of all color and her bouquet started shaking in her hands. Cameron tried to interrupt, stepping forward aggressively. "Alex, what the hell are you doing? This is insane. You're completely making this up to ruin our wedding." "Am I making it up, Cameron?" I pulled out more documents and held them high enough for everyone to see. These are certified copies of police reports, court judgments, divorce decrees, and criminal charges. Everything's public record, verified by a licensed private investigator. I handed a complete set to Jessica's parents in the front row. "Your daughter is a professional con artist who has been targeting successful men and their families for 15 years. She's currently in violation of 3 active restraining orders from her previous victims." Jessica's mother started crying. Her father grabbed the documents and began reading frantically. Cameron's face was turning red with rage and embarrassment, but I wasn't finished. "But Jessica isn't the only fraud standing at this altar." I continued, turning to address my brother directly. "Cameron has been telling everyone in town that we're business partners. He created fake contracts using my company letterhead and forged my signature to try to borrow $75,000 against my business success." I displayed the bank documents for the entire room to see. 2 weeks ago, my brother attempted to take out a fraudulent loan using counterfeit partnership agreements. When First National Bank called my office to verify the documents, that's how I discovered my own brother had been committing identity theft and document fraud using my reputation and business credentials. Cameron's best man stepped away from him. Several guests were pulling out their phones to take pictures of the documents. Jessica looked like she might faint or run, I couldn't tell which. "But here's my favorite part," I said, pulling out my phone and opening the family group chat. "Let me share some private conversations where my loving family discussed their strategies for extracting money from me." I started reading the messages in a clear, loud voice that carried to every corner of the venue. Cameron wrote, "He's so stupid about money, he'll pay for anything if you make it sound like a family emergency." Jessica added, "I've studied guys like Alex before they're desperate to buy family approval because they think money is their only value." Mom contributed, "As long as we make him feel needed, he'll keep writing checks." And Dad's wisdom, "It's not really manipulation if he genuinely wants to help." The wedding guests were staring in complete shock. Jessica's family looked mortified and angry. My parents were trying to disappear into their seats. Cameron looked like he wanted to physically attack me, but the crowd was too dense and the evidence too overwhelming. I faced the entire room for my final announcement. "So here's my wedding gift to this happy couple. I will never give them another penny. Not for this wedding, not for their honeymoon, not for their house, not for their future children, not for any emergency or crisis or opportunity that comes up. The personal ATM machine is permanently out of order." I looked directly at Cameron and Jessica, who were both visibly shaking now. "You told me you wanted a wedding that would show everyone who you really are. Congratulations, you got exactly what you asked for." The Golden Boys' empire collapsed in real time as vendors approached the family, demanding immediate payment. For services, guests started leaving early, and Jessica's relatives began asking very pointed questions about what else they hadn't been told. I walked out of Riverside Country Club and never looked back. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Within 30 minutes of my revelation, Riverside Country Club's management was demanding immediate payment for services. The wedding photographer packed up after Cameron couldn't produce a working credit card. Jessica's family confronted her in the parking lot, demanding explanations about the criminal charges they'd never heard about. Cameron attempted damage control by claiming I'd fabricated everything, but too many guests had photographed the legal documents. Within hours, the story was spreading through social media. The Golden Boy's reputation crumbled as people realized his lifestyle had always been funded by his brother's money. The Golden Boy's empire collapsed in real time. The desperate reconnection attempts started 72 hours later. Text messages filled with apologies and promises that everything would be different now. When I didn't respond, they escalated to voicemails I never returned. Cameron's messages were pathetic. Alex, we're brothers. I'll pay you back every penny, I promise. Jessica sent her own appeals. I never meant to hurt anyone. Cameron changed me. Can we please talk? My parents tried manipulation. We've always been proud of your success. Please don't let this ruin our relationship forever. But their true motivations became clear when bills started arriving. The venue sued for $18,000. Cameron's credit cards were maxed out. My parents' mortgage payment was due, and they'd been counting on their usual family loan. They only wanted their personal ATM machine back. 6 months later, I was living a completely different life in a new city. I'd expanded my business, joined a hiking group, started dating a woman who paid for her own dinners, and adopted a rescue dog who didn't care about my bank account. The best part wasn't the financial freedom, though saving $80,000 a year was nice. It was the emotional freedom. No more guilt trip calls about emergencies requiring wire transfers. No more family gatherings where I felt like a walking ATM. I kept one photo from the wedding on my desk, Cameron and Jessica in the parking lot surrounded by unpaid vendors and angry relatives finally experiencing consequences. I finally had a family that valued me, not my wallet.